All right, so this is going to be a tutorial on the bakery because I hear some people are having some issues with it. We're going to start from the beginning, basically create a new project and just work through what creating a light map with the bakery, or the whole process of creating a light map with the bakery is. We're going to call this tutorial, this project, bakery tutorial. Yes, I know the path already exists because I've already done this video about 3 times now. We're going to call it 1. Alright, so we're going to create a new scene within the URP template, because I assume we're not doing anything different. I mean, 3D does kind of make sense, I suppose, but then you'd have to convert it to URP, and it's already 3D, so it's... I don't know, if you have any more information on that, sure. I'd love to hear it. This is me just sort of, I guess, working out the problem. So here we are in a brand new scene. It's loading. It's connecting to my asset store. We got the URP little thing. It's first thing we're going to do. Since we're here, we're going to come in and we're going to bring in the bakery. Hopefully it loads. There we go. As you can see, I have a few tools and a bunch of asset packs because as much as I love Blender and making my own stuff, well, I'm not quite being paid for it yet, so there's no real obligation to spend too much time in Blender, especially when I can use other people's meshes and textures to do my own thing with them. I can always go into Blender and terrain and polyview them down if I need to, and of course that's another tool we need to talk about in Unity, but that's another video too. Polyview is a great tool. It's up there with Bakery and Magic Light Probes, where it just makes your life so much easier creating maps. Magic Light Probes will automatically place light probes all over your map. Terrain to mesh, which you saw earlier on my asset list, that'll obviously turn your terrain to mesh, while it'll also give you complete control of how many triangles are produced. So you can create a mesh within the terrain and then triangle it down to whatever you need to and create a quest spec map, sort of like Abandoned, or if you know some of my maps like Ardennes, you can take those meshes, put them into that, convert them out, and you can even take the mesh, create a new material, and put it into the universal render pipeline, and it works almost flawlessly. The only issues I've found, and I'm pretty sure it's not related to any of it, is negative batches by batching, and please get back to me if you've had any experience with that. But it only occurs on one map, and I'm working the problem. I'm learning. But as you can see, bakery's importing. We're just going to wait for that to go through. You can see I've got my example scene. It's got a main camera. It's got a directional light. We're going to get rid of some other stuff like the post-process volume. And I think it comes with a spotlight, but we're just going to get rid of it and start from scratch because I want to show you how to do this. Like, hey, I need to create a point light. You need to know how to do that spontaneously. You can't just rely on what's already built there. So the import, it's going to take a little bit. If you've placed light probes, because I can tell in 1.8 that we're using light probes now. Magic Light Probes is a great tool for that. It'll automatically place light probes across your map. Obviously, you're going to have to go through and make sure the ones that got pulled in, as I like to call them, into the terrain, because that sometimes happens with automatic light probe mappers. You need to go pull those out, and you need to create your own. So we can leave the main camera here. We can ignore all the stuff on it. There's a directional light. I do want to get rid of this last reflection probe because we're going to create our own. I want to show you some cool stuff to do with that. All right, so first thing we're going to do, just hold on one second. Let me check the OBS. Okay, it's definitely working. Cool. All right, we're going to create a light probe, or not a light probe, a point light. It is, I think, 2:30 in the morning here, so I'm a little out of it, and I've definitely played a lot of 1.8 tonight. So, see, there's our point light. It's creating light. It's doing things. It's doing stuff. But we don't need it to do what it's doing, so we need to create a baked light. We're going to turn it to something unique. Let's try red, because we want to be able to see the color. You can see, yeah, there's the color. And then with our directional light, obviously we're going to do the normal stuff we usually do. Make it mixed. Obviously check our assets and make sure they're all set to static. Yes. There we go. Static light maps. Cool, cool, cool. Everything's working. That's dead frame. We can ignore that. That's just the example scene. That's nothing to do with what I'm explaining here. All right, so first thing we're going to do after we've got all our lights basically where we want them. Yep, baked. Cool. We're going to create a skylight. It just needs to be in the scene. There's other things to it, like you can certainly, how to put it, you can certainly play with the color and do some interesting things, but for the most part, it doesn't really matter. But now that it's on the scene, we're going to render our light map, or it says render light map, but you're not really doing that. You're bringing up the tab. So bad description on their part, but you want to go to indirect lighting. You want to go to dominant direction. You want to go to L1. Legacy doesn't really matter, but I mean, L1 is what I usually pick, and I haven't had any issues with it. So, I mean, I've explored that territory. We use X Atlas because it will help you fill in all the holes in your light map that actually produce extra light maps. I say extra, but that's not really what they are. But it helps you cut down on the light maps. So you want to make sure you're using hole filling and X Atlas in all of those settings. You're going to come down here. If you have an RTX card, certainly click it. Otherwise, you're going to have to click terrain optimization, but we don't have any terrain, so it can go away. We're going to batch all our point lights. Obviously, it does what it says. It calculates multiple point lights in one pass, so no reason to disable it. Just keep it on. It's great. Obviously, we're going to go our tile size to 4K. And so you see it's producing light. We're going to come over here. We get a bunch of components. So for point lights, you obviously want to do a bakery point light, but for area lights and spotlights, it's the same. You want to do point light. You're going to come over here. You're going to make sure it's direct. We want the same color, so we're going to come over here, copy the hex, and just simply paste it here. You can have two different colors, but it's just mixing the colors. It doesn't really do much. You can certainly do some weird things, but don't. Unless you really want to play around and explore, I would just suggest doing the same color. Nice, easy. All right, next thing we need to look at is our directional light. We're going to come over, we're going to put a direct light on it. Come down, do the same thing, direct, indirect. We want the same color. I don't want to use yellow, so we're going to use white so we can see the contrast in the colors. And we're going to up the intensity on the point light to 3, just so we can get some sweet, sweet contrast. And we'll move the point light back a bit so we can see it on that wall back there. See, this is what it should look like once we produce a light. And as you can see, that's the base scene. There we go. All right, so everything's set up. These are the settings we need to use. I usually do 5 textiles per unit, but I mean, you can go up to 20. And I believe you know what textiles will do to a light map. It'll increase the size, or the megabyte size, memory size, whatever you want to call it. But 5 is a nice good average where it doesn't seem to, you don't get those jaggy shadows. So 5 is a great place. Anywhere between 5 and 10 really is a wonderful place, especially for quest maps. And we're just going to click render. We're going to save our scene. We'll get back to it, but if you were looking at the bakery, I guess tab, there's a little, I guess, address of where you can locate these light maps or put them in a specific place. I usually like to use a temporary place just because it's easier to deal with excess light mapping. And we're just going to wait. And as you can see, it's just rolling on through. I mean, we're at 79% on a scene that if we use the Unity light mapper, especially CPU progressive, or progressive CPU, would probably take 30 minutes, if not an hour. And as you can see, like, look at that. That's, I mean, we can move this, and there it is. You can see that the light map is 100% baked on. I mean, it's not flawless. As you can see, it gets a little jaggy there, but let's see how big our light map is. Oh my God, 8 megabytes, and it's one whole light map. And you can see we have the direct light, or the directional lights shadow there too, and it's produced in the same quality. Hold on, there we go. A little bit of pixelation if you look really really close, but no one's going to notice that, especially once we start looking at these textures. And as you can see, you get a nice, very defined shadow. There's none of those. I mean, you've been using Enlighten, I can tell. I've seen it on the new maps in 1.8. I've seen it in the mall map. I forgot the name of it, the custom one. I've seen it in a bunch of maps, basically the Enlighten, where the seams connect between, like, say, this wall and the ground and the frame. There's like just stray light seams, it seems, and you can't fight them. You're taking so long to do a bake. You're taking, to even see the difference in your settings. It's 18 hours later on the big maps, or 6 hours later on the smaller maps. Like, that's insane to me. And this you can iterate in 15 minutes, and that, like, something like this, something small like this, took less than a minute. So your iteration process is much faster. You can see the difference in what you're doing. You can even see on assets like this, there's a nice, gorgeous, gorgeous shadow there. And that's pretty much it. Actually, no, there's one last thing. We're going to talk about, we can get rid of post-process volume to just sort of, we don't need any of that. But the last thing I want to talk about is another great thing that it can do. It can render your reflection probe for you. The bakery is very, very good at it, especially compared to Unity's version. And I'll just show you how to do that. We can come down here, and there's a whole bunch of different tools, and you can play with them, because Update Skybox Probe is a fun one. Render Light Probe is a fun one. Render Selected Groups, well, that one doesn't quite work all the time. I'm not sure why. But for the most part, all of them are really useful. We'll render our reflection probe. Oh, it took 2 seconds, and look at that. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. It's baked on. You can move it around. It's not going to change. It's 100% defined. You don't get any of that fogginess that sometimes the Unity version does, or the Unity light mapper does when it renders your reflection probe. And when you go around, it seems to wrap around and do what it needs to do as a reflection probe. Like, look at that. That's gorgeous. Obviously, it's not perfect, but we don't need it to be perfect. The resolution's down to 128. You don't want to do any more than that. I'm sorry if this sounds a bit like a rant, but I love the bakery, and I really think Onward would be better for it, because it produces glorious light maps, and the ambience it produces, I can't do it on the Unity light mapper. I've tried. I beat my head against it with Old Town and my other maps, my other early maps, and you just can't produce the results that you can with the bakery. It's worth every penny, and unfortunately you missed the Christmas sale where it was half off. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching, and have a great day. If you have any questions, please contact Snooperfax or Mr. Death to get my specific, address or email. Thank you, and have a great night.